So, in the play that I've been rehearsing for a bit, we had our first live performance last night, and afterwards, the director sent a nice audio file with all of his notes, and he sent an incredibly wonderful personal note to me, and it really illuminated a few things, and I wanted to share because sometimes directors so often can see things that actors can't. Part of it is because an actor is putting their body out there, and that comes with a certain amount of risk, and sometimes risk colors your ability to be objective about things. Something, though, that overall with this experience coming back to live theater after so long away, that I've been reflecting on is how much it augments challenges that I already have as an artist, and how much it illuminates the sort of spiral dynamic of learning. It can feel in a way like I'm struggling with the same things I struggled with in college, but the truth is that I'm in a different place. So if you imagine that you're on this like spiral staircase, I might be in the same geographical latitude but different longitude, if that makes sense. Listen, didn't study that in college. Whatever, geography, geology. I understand that I'm, yes, struggling with very similar things, but kind of from a different perspective. And that whole process of unearthing that structure of learning during this play has been really fascinating to me, and I've been trying to be present and aware of that. I'm also very aware of the fact that I am not as hard on myself as I would have been 12 years ago. You know, I think that I can sense the personal growth in myself as a human being, but also as an artist. God, there was something that happened. Oh, this is what it was. There was something that happened recently in the rehearsal. We had a run, and it was just a tech run, no audience. And it was like swimming through tar. I just could not figure out where I was and what I was doing. And I got off stage that night. It was like, that stunk a million. And strangely didn't feel destroyed about it, which is kind of new, for me, I think. I guess it's not new to me. I've gotten less hard on myself as I've gotten older. But to have that level of struggle on stage and to not be in a super bad way about it was a pleasant surprise. I wanted to talk about some of the reflections I had receiving this director note and the things that it helped me realize. So I will say that throughout this process, something that I have noticed is that I very much feel like there's a right way to do it, and I'm not getting it right. And in the beginning of the process, getting the play on its feet, that was a real struggle for me because I would get a note and think, oh God, I didn't do it right. And while I thought that, I also understood that that wasn't what the director was saying, and that wasn't what was happening. That we were all sort of figuring it out together and exploring, and there was no right or wrong. We were just kind of trying to find the most effective vehicle for communicating the story. So there were those two trains running. There was the one as a sort of subjective actor that was saying, God, I feel terrible that I'm getting it wrong all the time. And there was the one as the more objective sort of artist, we'll say, in the sort of archetypal way, I suppose, that was a little bit more understanding of where we stood in the process and not judging myself so harshly. Anyway, getting a show on its feet in front of people is a very different experience to rehearsing it and in tech. And it's a honestly, very, very different experience to performing on film. Because if you think about it, with film, even when you get to the final performance, you're still just teching it. The final performance in film is probably more similar to teching a play than performing it, in the sense that it's going to be cut apart by an editor, and it's shaped, and sound design and composing, all these things are going to go into it. So what you do on the day in film is not the final product. You're not delivering that to an audience. And a film crew is not an audience. They're a crew. They're there with you to help you tell the story. You're all working together. You're working together. Nobody's a spectator on a film set. So it's very, very different. Getting a show on its feet, you don't know if any of those people are going to come back. Yes, it's an invited dress, and hopefully they do come back when the show is done. Hopefully they do come back when the show has opened and come back to see a more fully realized version. But they also might not. And so that audience member in invited dress might leave. And what they saw that night is the fully realized piece as far as they are concerned. So it's different. The awareness in my body is different. The stakes are different. The experience is different. Anyway. So throughout this process, I have sort of clocked that I feel like there's this right way to do it, and it has left me feeling less relaxed and less fluid in my process and my body. I somewhat consciously clocked that, but I haven't really known how to get around it. And I've tried a bunch of ways: music, poetry, reading other books, dancing, sensory work, imagination work. I've tried a lot of the tools that I know that I have in my belt. I've even just tried, talking to my castmates as a real human being with the lines that I'm given in the script. And I have still felt like I just struggling against restraints in my process. There have been a couple of things that have helped. Like I did do some exercises before last night's performance that I think really freed me up more than I had been, but it was like a 10% change, you know what I mean? So last night the director sends me this wonderful, wonderful note. Now, I will preface this by saying I am more prone to think that someone has cast me out of pity than they have cast me because they want me there. This is clearly a foundational belief system that I need to combat, because what director in their right mind would ruin their product to hire an actor out of pity? I don't know a one. I've never produced for one. I've never met one who would do that. So I need to get rid of that, because it's just not based in realism. It's based purely in some kind of low self-esteem spin that is not worth my time anymore. But that being said, because I come from that sort of like, oh, they probably cast me out of pity, I sort of see notes that way and I see feedback that way. I shouldn't say see, I feel it that way. I see it face value. I see it like, oh, okay, good, that's a good note, but I feel it like I'm trash. And even if the director's amazing, this happens, even if the director could be the nicest person in the world, and I'm still going to feel that way. So last night I get this note from the director, and he's just telling me how lucky he feels to have me there, and how they feel like they found me, and it's such a good thing for production, and love what I'm doing and everything. And his encouragement to me, which, oh my God, am I getting emotional? Okay, his encouragement to me was, I'm doing such excellent work, and to just explore now, to feel more play and more freedom, and to explore more sides of the character and allow her to surprise herself and just have fun. Okay, y'all, that's wild. First of all, it's a good director to give a note like that, because he truly saw to the core of what was going on with me, which was that I was doing good work. I was trying my best to do all this wonderful, wonderful work, and was frustrated at my lack of feeling free. And when I tell you, the change in my body receiving that note was profound. And I don't want to be one of these actors, but it was like I suddenly had permission. And so I explored the script a bit today, and it was a totally different posture of exploration. It felt like I'd been walking through a hallway that I could barely fit in, like my shoulders were cramped. And all of a sudden, I opened the door into a field where I could go wherever I wanted. And it was more joyful, and it was less inhibited, and even just like the tension in my body that I sometimes feel when I'm exploring was gone, or it had migrated to a place that it could live more sustainably. I understood parts of the script that I hadn't really been able to access before, and there were issues. There were things about the through line for my character that I felt like was square peg round hole, that suddenly I was like, wait a minute, why have I been limiting myself in that way? Why I've been seeing it that way? That is not how it needs to go. And also those two things that I thought were inconsistent, not inconsistent. It opened up so much for me, and it helped me also understand that there were some preconceived notions I had about the character in the script that were not serving me, and they weren't actually consistent with what was on the page. Okay, so this is all wonderful. And I'm like, hallelujah, we have our second invited dress tomorrow, and we go into previews, and then we open. So I have time in a way. I have time to, of course I have time to explore the script, but I also have time to sort of explore this in front of an audience, which is wild, before we even open. And also, there's this part of me that's like, it's interesting that it took this long to get to that place. It's interesting that it took this much rehearsal to get to the place of freedom and to get to the place of permission. And so there are a couple of things that I want to work on as an actor. The first is understanding that process takes time, and that not everything can happen at once. There's that great saying, God made time so that everything wouldn't happen at once. It would be a dog pile situation if that happened. Like, you don't want your entire process to happen overnight. You gotta, if you're making a cake, you mix the wet ingredients in the dry, and then you put them together. You don't mix everything all at once. That'd be not good. I did it once, actually. I forgot the sugar and had to add it in once everything was added in, and that cake was not good. Probably a metaphor for my life. Part of my realization with this is just an acceptance of, I want to accept the fact that process happens over time. Not everything can happen at once. And when something shows up, welcome it. Don't judge it for not showing up sooner. There was an Esther Perel podcast episode, which I 10 out of 10 recommend. It's called Where Should We Begin? And she was talking to a married couple. And one of the things that they were struggling with was the wife wanted her husband to communicate things better or whatever. And so during the course of the session, the husband finally broke through and was able to use his words to communicate his feelings. And he says this thing to his wife about how he's feeling. And immediately the wife says, see, that's what I've been wanting from you. And Esther completely stopped her, and she said, no, you don't get to ask for something for years and then punish it when it shows up. That's not how this works. He's giving it to you now. Thank him. And I do think that there's something about that with process for me. Sometimes I'm yearning for something and I'm asking over and over again. When it finally shows up, I'm like, where were you? Another great example of this is Molly Grew in The Last Unicorn, when the unicorn finally shows up to her and she's an old woman and she says, "How dare you? How dare you show up now when I am this?" Instead of celebrating the fact that she's just seen a unicorn. So often we look a gift horse in the mouth. We punish something for showing up because it didn't show up when we wanted it to. And by punish, I just mean we go, why? Why didn't it? I don't know. I don't know why this didn't show up until this point in my process, but I'm sure glad it's here now. And I am excited to incorporate it, and I'm excited to see where it takes me. And it's okay because the director's happy with the show, he has said, and happy with the casting, thank God. And so now we just get to have the joy of moving through the process and exploring it in greater depth and detail. That's it. So that's number one, is accept that not all things in the process can happen at once, and instead of judging them for when they show up, celebrate that they show up at all. The second thing is, what is this belief that people cast me out of pity? What is this belief that anyone would cast me for any reason other than wanting to cast me? Being chosen is such a sticky wicket for me as a human being. I grew up very nerdy and not really popular, accepted, whatever. Like, I was made fun of, and I felt outside of a lot of circles, experiences in life in general as a child, into teens, and even into college and adulthood. And so for some reason, I have this very, very tricky relationship with being chosen, with feeling chosen, whatever you want to call it. And it's something that I want to examine. It's not something I yet want to fix. And I think that's a very important distinction for me because I tend to rush to fixing. I want to just spend some time with her. Like, what is this interesting relationship I have with not feeling chosen, wanting to feel chosen? What is that? So that's the second thing that I would like to do. And the third thing that I would like to do is figure out how to incorporate freedom into the work sooner. And now this goes contrary to what I said before about like things in the process can only happen at a certain time, whatever. But I'm just going to be totally honest. There are plays that I read or pieces that I read and immediately I feel like, oh, I'm just in the story. I get it. I'm just here. Blah, blah. And there are other plays that take a little bit longer for me to create that map in my body, that take a little longer for me sometimes to honestly just literally understand. And when that happens, and a bit with this play it happened where I was like, I'm having trouble a little bit just understanding what's literally happening. And then I went through the script and did like a literal pass, and it was so helpful. There are plays that don't open up as fully to me. I think those are harder for me to find freedom in, but also my body tenses up. And if I feel like there are expectations and I need to get somewhere fast, I tense up and I don't have the same amount of freedom. So I'm interested in exploring some kind of somatic practice with that. Meaning, if I get the sense that I am feeling like there's a right way to do something, bring it back to my body and see if I'm tense anywhere. And see if I can reset or relax a part of my body. Now that feels very outside in. I'm literally going, ooh, I'm tense here. Let me relax and then head back into the work. Pause, relax, head back in. But I do think there's a feedback loop here. I really do. There is some wisdom to just like not allowing bodily tension to seep into the groundwater, like continue to try to be aware of my body because that's an area where I need some help. And just restart processes if I find myself starting to get really tense. Just be like, oh my gosh, girl, slow down. Take a deep breath, maybe do some head circles, and then head back into the work. Somebody might call this pattern disruption. Like if you're in a sad place and all of a sudden you just go, and it's like you're just shaking your body in a way out of a pattern, and you're trying to get your whole system to reset. So I think I'm going to try something like that. And if you'd like an update on how that goes, I'll let you know. I'll have to be working on another project. Well, actually, I can do it on this one, on the play, I suppose. Yeah, I'm those are the sort of three processes that I want to take from here. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because I think director notes get a bad rap. Actors are generally taught that like directors don't know what they're talking about. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes directors aren't good at directing actors, but I think most are, honestly, if you can get out of your own way to hear what they're trying to tell you. I think part of the reason that directors get such a bad rap is that actors can get away about it and they can fight the note or defend their take or get really emotional, and that's not very helpful. I gotta feed my squirrel 1 second. So overall, I'm definitely team learn from a director note, and this director in particular has given really great notes and has been very supportive and collaborative in the room, and so I think the ability to learn has been augmented by the fact that he has been so open. He's also an educator, and I think that really helps because he knows how to speak to people at many different, places on the process timeline, if that makes sense. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful as you head into artistic processes of your own, and maybe there's something that you also take from this, and maybe also there's something completely different that you hear out of this whole process and learn. I really love that that art as a process seems to so deeply mirror spiritual and emotional and mental health lives. And that's something that really fascinates me. And anytime, the strange thing is, even when I talk about things that are very difficult, I'm also constantly fascinated by why things are difficult. And so it feels like there's two minds, there's this one that's like, why are things so hard? And there's always like, oh, it's so fascinating that things are hard. So that's why I started this YouTube in a way. It's also why I share on Instagram, is because I hope that these things are helpful, but also just because they fascinate me and I process by speaking. I'm a very verbal processor, as you can tell. So it's also been a help to me to process in this way. So I really appreciate you being here. If you have any questions or you want me to cover anything or just want to hear my weird thoughts about Star Trek or whatever, I don't know, let me know. I have thoughts, apparently. So anyway, see you later, and thanks for being here. It is the witching hour for planes. I have chosen the wrong hour to airplane song. Leaving on a jet plane.